Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Chris, CEO and founder of ElysianNXT, and today's podcast is all about data management. It's focused on those risk and finance users who on a daily basis struggling with data not fit for purpose. So for those lucky ones who live in the Shangri-La of data management, where the data is pure as a mountain spring, stop watching, pour yourself a drink, tap yourself on the back, and enjoy because you've hit the data jackpot. For all the other mere mortal users, please watch this episode because we've invited two heavy hitters in the industry. In the hot seats, we have Kristof, who's one of the architects behind our brand new data management module, which we baptized Data.NXT, and senior consultant Nida, who's in the trenches, battling every day to implement our Data.NXT. Nida, Kristof, welcome to the studio. So let's start with the good old why question. So ElysianNXT has made some headways into the real-time risk management industry. And now we're releasing this brand new module, Data.NXT. Why?
It grew organically based on the pain point we have experienced during our implementation. Because of the data that is not fit to purpose, we have encountered delays during the implementation causing UAT overruns or recurring data issue during end-of-month runs. With the pressure from the regulator, this could, a worst case scenario, it could be potential penalties.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes emergency corrections are made to aggregated results without any form of data lineage, let alone the data governance and auditability. One of our clients ended up having PD higher than they should have due to the invalidity of data. So they have to set this data to the default bucket with more conservative value. No doubt this has a financial impact to the bank. Looking forward, the regulations increase the amount of required data, with the data itself being interconnected. For example, the credit risk data is being used in the ECL calculation, credit risk calculation, and CSRBB calculation. With this data being incorrect, the impact is wide effect.
Wow. So it means that the problem only gets bigger and bigger. So it's not only breaking the data lineage, which is crucial in the industry, but as you quoted the example of that bank, it's really costing real dollars and not having that proper data in there. Now, before the dawn of Data.NXT, how was the industry tackling those data problems?
So the golden rule is to fix this data in the source system, but this is not always straightforward. So as we know, the data user and the data owners are not from the same department. One data can be used among multiple systems, with the definition fit to purpose may vary in each system. Changing data is often require technical department or even an outsourced personnel to work on this, and it may not be possible because the root cause cannot be identified.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it is possible, it would require regression testing across all the systems that use this data.
That would take a considerable amount of time, I suppose. Yeah. Okay. Kristof, you want to add something to that?
Yes, so all the things that Nida is mentioning, all these problems are not new problems, right? Banks have been dealing with them for at least a few decades now. So in the process, they've come up with a few, let's say, strategies that have proven quite effective. So there's been this move towards data integration. Originally, data, was stored in silos, was not easily accessible. So banks have put tremendous effort into putting this into data warehouses, data lakes, making the data much more accessible to everybody in the organization. So banks have also implemented data governance frameworks. So these frameworks are in place to tell people how to manage their data with the purpose of keeping the reliability, the accuracy, and the availability of the data up par. So in order to achieve this, they have implemented things like data quality tools. So these tools are there to identify issues with their data, to profile, to clean, to enrich. So all of these tools are already there. Besides the data quality aspect, they've also put some effort into data security. So first of all, data security is paramount in the financial industry. There's no doubt about that. But on top of that, regulators have come up with new types of regulations that banks need to comply with. So for example, there's the likes of GDPR, CCPA, BCBS 239, and so on. So my point being with all of this is that we're not here to replace or change all of the above. So what we're trying to do is to be complementary to it. So the point is that we want to make our users self-sufficient in terms of their data. And that self-sufficiency is very relevant to us specifically because, as you know, one of our key strengths is the fact that we have very powerful simulation capabilities. So we allow users to change the models, to rerun calculations, to run what-if scenarios. But of course, that requires the user to be both self-sufficient in terms of data and in terms of modeling. So in order to really optimally use our solution, that self-sufficiency is really a need for us. Lastly, there's also the move towards SaaS. So we've seen with our clients that SaaS is becoming more popular. So a lot of our clients opt to use our solution as a SaaS solution. And there, you really need to be self-sufficient. You can't rely on involvement of internal IT to make the changes. You need to do it yourself. And on top of that, there's really more stringent user access controls in place. So the days and what you were describing, whereby in the back end we're making this last-minute quick change, those days will be over soon.
Yeah, those days are gone, luckily enough. So that's plenty for the question why and why now. So thank you for the variety of reasons. Let's now dive into the specifics. We talked about quantifying the quality of all that data that we're streaming in. How do we handle separating the wheat from the chaff? How do we do that?
With Data.NXT, the goal is that business users can configure everything through the UI with all the traceability. The system works through the data quality rules. The rule can be both technical, for example, in a specific format, or functional, such as that the start date should be less than maturity date always. Rules can also be specific to context where the data is being used. For example, for products that are under the scope of IFRS 9 should have their past due data, but for products that are under the scope of market risk, we do not need that data.
Okay, that's a good point. Kristof, what's your take on quantifying data quality? How do we practically seize up the quality of that data that we stream into our platform?
So as Nida already mentioned before, she used the term fit for purpose. I think that's really what it boils down to. The difficulty there is that fit for purpose doesn't have a fixed definition. So it really depends on who you ask and you'll get a different answer there. So for example, on organizational level, based on the operations of that organization, there's a different data landscape, different data needs with different data sources. So already there we can see that there's a big variety of possibilities. Within an organization, you have the risk department, the finance department. Those people also have a different opinion on when a certain piece of information is fit for purpose. So even there, another set of possible outcomes. Then, for example, within the risk department, for credit risk versus market risk, it's also a whole different set of pieces of information required. So fit for purpose also means something else there. So from the start, when we started building this module, we knew that configurability, flexibility were really the key features there. So that's how we realized it. So it starts by creating the data sources. So you can define where your data is coming from, what data will be loaded. And the next step are the rules. So for each piece of information in your system, you can define one or multiple rules that apply for that information. And then you need to make a few decisions. So first of all, failing that validation, what does that mean? How bad is it? And once we have established that we failed a certain validation, what is the action that we need to take and how do you want to remediate the situation? So in conclusion, we want to build a solution, or we wanted to build a solution that is tailored to the needs of an organization, but is also aware of the context that it's operating in.
Yeah, okay. Maybe let's make that a little bit more visible for the viewers. Let's go into the nitty-gritty of how Data.NXT works. Nida, feel free to show some of the goodies to make it more practical.
Let's take a sneak peek into our system. For each data quality rule set, users can define the data quality dimension to identify what data quality we are validating, whether it is accuracy, completeness, consistency, timeliness, validity, or uniqueness. Then users can assign the criticality, whether this rule will have high, medium, or low criticality. With these 9 data quality rules here, users can set up a scoring to analyze the overall data quality. Different weight per criticality and dimension can be set as well.
Nida, thanks for showing this. This really looks cool. Now, what's the playbook? How to deal with contracts that are failing these validation rules?
So there are 3 ways to do it in our system. We call it remediation type. The first remediation type is that we reject these contracts with data issues. These contracts will not be loaded into our database. The second remediation type is that we fix this value to a default value, whether it can be conservative value or a temporary value that we will correct it later. Mm-hmm. The third remediation type is that we load this contract in any way so that we can fix this value in the next step.
Some of the examples are kind of pretty obvious, but how does Data.NXT lend a helping hand to maybe, data not fit for purposes which are not that obvious? How would that work?
So there's actually 2 ways of doing it. So the first approach would be to try to automate as much as possible. So for that, we allow on incoming data for outlier rules to be defined. So for example, there's things like certain rates that can fall out of a certain threshold that's unexpected. We can easily flag that. We allow the data to come in, but it's at least raised as a potentially problematic. For another example would be, like you said, a maturity date has to be later than start date. So these are the more straightforward ones. We can automate these. I think the real power lies with the business users. So what we're trying to do is we try to offer them the tools to really challenge the data and to come up with potential situations that look a bit dodgy or that don't look like what they should be. So for that, we have created an extensive portfolio search component where they really can get, as they say, the information out of the data.
Mm-hmm. That sounds so exciting. Nida, I'm dying to see it. Can you please dive into the system and show it?
Yes, let's see the capability of our contract search. This portfolio search feature allows business users to access all products that were loaded in our system through the UI. For example, IFRS 9 user may want to focus on the day past due data and see if there are outliers by ordering the property, while IRBB user would focus more on the interest rate data. As you can see here, by using the feature, we can identify that there is a data issue in the interest rate property.
Okay, now that we identify that issue, how about correcting it?
So there are 2 stages that we can do this correction. The first stage is in the data loading process. Mm-hmm. We could use the remediation type, fix value, to fix this interest rate data to some default conservative values.
So that's done at the incoming point, so when the data is streaming in?
Yes, it will be automatically.
Okay.
Yes. And in the second stage that we can do it as well is that after we load the data in any way, we can correct it in the data adjustment process. So earlier we have identified that there is a data issue in interest rate type. Let's see how we can fix that. Mm-hmm. In the data management model, a rule is set up to validate that the interest rate should not be more than 1, which is 100%. In this data quality dashboard, it shows 18 contracts failed this validation. We can trace and see what contracts are they. However, I will use the portfolio search to identify these 18 contracts by querying contracts with the interest rate data greater than 1. Then export them in Excel file. I will adjust these contracts by adding the adjustment as follows, using the data upload entry type and putting reason as the data entry is wrong. Then in the file that we downloaded, let's correct the interest rate values by dividing them by 100 and upload this file. There's a review process to make sure the adjustment is as we intended before we submit this adjustment. Before and after adjustment values are shown side to side.
Wow, you make it look so easy. It's like a walk in the park. Now, there's a lot of data, government policies and standards which needs to be followed. How do we pull that off? How do we guarantee that?
All of the changes that we make are done via the UI. So what that means is that we are working within the boundaries of our solution. So the security framework that has been set up as part of the implementation is fully active. What that means is that all of the applicable user roles, permissions that exist in the system are active. So you also need to explicitly define who has the authority to make any changes, and all of that is also happening within the same security framework. Very important, and we offer the option to define a chain of approval before any adjustments is applied. So this is where the real extra layer of assurance and control in the process is being put in place. So we're effectively applying a multi-eyes principle here. And we don't just make these changes blindly. So we make sure that there is a comprehensive audit trail available of all the activities in the system, so we can easily trace any modification, also trace any value back to its original value, so you see the before and after on a contract level. So all of this is available through the UI. So essentially we operate by the rules set by the data management models created by the users. So this ensures that all of the data is governed and managed according to the specifications set by the bank and in line with all of their applicable policies.
Wow, that is impressive. All the bells and whistles are there to make sure that proper procedures are followed. Now let's try to summarize it, which is not easy because this has been a long podcast. So Data.NXT comes in to help with all aspects of data management. From the moment that we stream in data, the data mapping, the profiling, the quality assessment, the remediation, the correction, querying the data. Is that a fair and square summary?
Yes. I would also like to emphasize that our system is driven from an end user perspective. It is the user that owns the data.
We're loving that power to the user sentiment. Because in the end, it's all about our users in risk and finance. They're the ones that brings the bacon home. They have to make sure that they can explain, the end results. That the whole data lineage has to be there to be able to do that. Thank you, Nida and Kristof, for that very deep dive into Data.NXT. A million thanks to all our viewers, and if you are keen and hungry to see more, please visit our brand new website, www.ElysianNxt.com. Thank you.